Not quite sure how this is going to play out just yet, but one of the issues we've had recently with these darn things is you can't get them to go to high idle. You know, after you choke it to get the first pop, you know, with most chainsaws, including these, you'd like to have the carburetor throttle setting to a high idle so that the next couple pulls it'll light off and start running so it warms up. And then you click it off high idle, and hopefully with the saw tuned properly it'll both run and then restart. And sometimes you have to go to high idle to do that. Not quite sure how to show this, but that sets you to choke, right? That turns choke off, and you'd like it to be at a high idle. But if you look inside there, and I really don't think it'll show with the camera, that has not happened. And then you release it. Oh, maybe I'll try it again with the camera right in there. So let's try this again. You hold the throttle, choke. Now you got the choke on. To turn the choke off, you'd slip that lever up once. And it's supposed to be at high idle. And if you look in there, it's not. That throttle plate has not moved a bit. It should be looking something like that. But it's not. It's not doing anything. And you hear it click. It's supposed to release to normal throttle. But that whole mechanism is just not working. The choke works fine, but when you release the choke, you can look in there and see that it's not got to high idle. So even though it goes through that click like it's releasing high idle, it never got there to begin with. And that creates all kinds of problems trying to start the saw, because you really need to have it up like that. One of the ways I've worked around that in the past is just set my idle really high. And that's really not right. That's not really safe. So I've gone through the process of trying to figure out how many parts I got to change in order to make the high idle actually work on these MS660's from Farmertec. You know, the early ones didn't have a problem. It's these later ones. And I don't know if it's the trigger, or is it this? This is OEM, by the way. So is this. Is it the length of the rod, you know, the actuating rod, or is the actual connection to the carburetor? And I'm not sure of those four pieces what exactly has changed since the first series of these saws that I've worked on, and certainly different than OEM. But it's something that's been a problem for the last two of these that I put together, and some of my customers who bring them in where they've put them together, I don't want to work on those things. But if they're friends, I'll do it. You know, and I've found that to be pretty common this last year or so. So, short video. I changed this to OEM. By the way, the OEM part is much stiffer, much better material than the one that comes in the kit. So that's worth doing anyway. And this is that multi-function deal. And I was wondering if there was something in here that was different. But that didn't help. So the second part we're going to change is the trigger itself. And this all comes apart pretty easy. Basically, to take this top piece of the handle off, it's just a screw. That's a Phillips head. Goes right in there. That comes right off. And these parts, they come out pretty easy. This is the actuating rod. It just slides right off of there. And I'll just pull that off. See how that comes up. And the trigger should be pretty free right about now. Kind of slides up and out of there. So really all I have to do to put the OEM trigger on is kind of reverse that process. And set it right back down in there and see if that makes a difference. So you can sort of see how they just set right down in there. I may end up having to push that out of there. Wow, that's a big difference. Oh yeah. That works a lot different. So there is a change here. Let me get the handle put back together. Alright. With an OEM replacement trigger, this is the one that came out. This was the one that came with Farmertec. And this is an OEM lever. So I've replaced both of those parts in this saw. Let's take a look inside and see if we can see if there's any change. Choke on. Now look inside there and see that that throttle plate is part open now with the choke off. And that's what it was not doing before. And of course, when you release it, it actually goes to a closed throttle. So now this saw has, in fact, a high idle. And I suspect that its starting issues just went away. And I suspect that if you folks out there with the later versions of these Farmertec kits, if you look inside there and don't have, pull the throttle, set the choke, and then lift up once, if you don't have that part throttle working, your saw is not going to start. Not unless you're able to hold that throttle open and drop, start the darn thing, and that's going to cut your leg off. So my recommendation is, here we have another issue. Replace both these parts, both the multifunction lever and the trigger with OEM. So the parts that I'm replacing are beginning to pile up. And so this saw really has over $500 into it. You know, it's got closer to $550 versus the $400 or $350 that a lot of people were expecting. My guess is we put $550 to $600 into the saw, including the kit, and you've got yourself a new saw that actually might last. You know, I might even suggest putting a different top end on it. The bottom end and crank, oh that's right, this one has an upgraded crank as well. So let me go back and review what this saw has different than what the kit had. So if you bought the kit and you got, say, $300 into the kit, this is what I've added to this saw in order to try to solve the little gremlins that come with the parts as they show up from, you know, from China. Obviously, first these two pieces here, this a multifunction lever and the trigger, OEM seal, OEM pull start pulley. Okay. This one has a highway muffler because I want to have the screens in there for spark arrestor. This one has a different brand crankshaft that I bought through HL Supply. It has a highway clutch and it has a different drum. I'm not sure which one it is. I think it came from either Oregon or one of the aftermarket drums. I have to go back into the videos, but it's not the same drum. It has the highway handle and it has Husqvarna decomp. It has a highway pop-up piston, 54 millimeter, inside the Farmertec cylinder. So there's quite a few changes, you know. And the ones that were a real pain in the neck for me, well, first of all, this new situation where you can't get them started, that's a pain in the neck. These stripping out were a big pain in the neck. I don't know what happened there. The old ones didn't do it, but the ones that came in the last group of parts did. The handle bending, and anytime you know, give it a tug, they just bend. That's been a pain in the neck. So there's several parts you have to plan on, you know, upgrading if you're going to make these things work in the real world. So let me see if it starts after all that. I'm going to have to go off to the side here, so I'm not going to put it on camera. restart. It's ready to go. So there's your solution to those saws that won't start. And it's not the carburetor, it's not the ignition, it's not the flywheel, it's not all that crap that people have been talking about. It's just simply the multi-function lever and trigger assembly that needs to be replaced with OEM. So just plan on it. Talk to you later. Bye for now.